We're recording.
All right, I'd like to call to order policy meeting, noting all board members present, as well as Ryan and Steve. So I would take a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I did not receive any public comments, and we don't have any, so we'll get right into policies.
All right.
Turn it over, Randy.
Very good. We're in the 600 policies, so these are all budget related. Steve and Ally have had a chance to review them. We met with Ted to go through them. A lot of policies, but I think we can move fairly quickly through them. But we'll start off with, we will kind of wander through it is through the matrix that you have as part of your packet, and then each one of the other policies that are associated with it. Rebecca has things we can pull up if there's questions. So starting off with policy 620, annual operating budget. What we're looking at there is to replace our current policy with the PRG. PRG is Policy Resource Guide from the School Board Association, and their sample policy, and then we're renumbering them. We felt that this has been reviewed and that this reflects really what we need for the operating budget policy. The next one is annual budget development schedule. And what we're choosing to do here is to actually keep the current rule that we have that has our current schedule. You will see that there's throughout the policies, we've made a few just language changes, changing business manager to director of business services so that we're consistent as much as possible. I think we've caught most of those now. But otherwise, we will stay generally with our same schedule and keep the current policy that we have.
I did have one, as I read through it, one thing that kind of was a little bit of a pickup when I read it. If you go down to May.
Yep.
May references the third draft of the budget first, and then the second draft of the budget. Can you switch those two sentences? Just sequentially.
So the second draft is presented to the board and the budget committee reviews it there.
Yeah.
So just switch them.
Yeah.
Sure.
This would read better for my brain.
No
And
worries.
in June. Do we do that public hearing at the board meeting? In June?
We done it in July, but I think we took it out here.
Yeah, I didn't remember doing it. I know it's kind of.
You want it out of here, Steve?
Yeah, but I think we took it. If you looked in July.
They're definitely revised by the superintendent.
Yeah, we took it out.
So we adopt,
Well, we have it still.
Yeah, we still show it the
Oh,
first
that's
thing.
what you're saying.
You see it?
The very first.
Public hearing held third draft of the budget.
Okay, we were intending to strike that out.
Oh, that can come out. Okay.
That's not a requirement, and really that now that the annual meeting is in August, there's a public hearing in August, so it seems very repetitive.
All right, so we can take that out and from May, we'll swap the sentences as drawn. Perfect. All right, 622 budget implementation. We're looking at keeping our current policy. Again, the only change we have there is business manager to director of business services. Six 22.1 line item transfer authority. We'll keep our current policy. School PRG does not have a sample policy here, and we recommend keeping that. Six 30 post issuance compliance policy for tax exempt and tax advantaged obligations. This is one that was written by legal counsel. We have reviewed it, and we're recommending keeping the current policy versus adopting one from the PRG. So this is one that Steve has worked with our legal counsel over time to develop. A lot of legalese. 657 grant applications and acceptance of grants. We've renumbered this item and are replacing it with the PRG sample.
I think the only thing I brought up in this was what what is defined as the district. Not that.
Right.
Because we go through and say the district, I can't think of it specifically.
Yeah, you did have that as a question.
So I just brought up who's the district, who's making the decision, and I kind of didn't put it on anyone's shoulders. And kind of reference whoever's them dealing with it, they have the ability.
And I think I looked at the district. I think if you look in like the item that's in the highlights, it says, except as otherwise approved or authorized by the board shall approve final acceptance of a grant that the district commits to receiving, implementing, and administrating. We have grants that are written by several different people. I mean, we have some that are federal grants that we submit administratively. We have some that are like mini grants that people receive through guidance counselors or others may put in. So I think district is just kind of the blanket as far as someone in the district is putting forth a grant of some sort and receiving some sort of funding. That's how I would read it.
And then along with that, the only thing that didn't seem to be a big problem. That because I would imagine there's certain grants that you have certain requirements to do, like maybe as the district. Is that in our best interest to be taking on that grant? And it wouldn't necessarily go back past the board to review it or approve it. You know what I mean? It could be strings attached or something that, wait a minute, I don't think we should have done that thing. But I didn't see anything in here that we would, as a board, necessarily.
I think as just a matter of course, most grants that at least that I see have some level of other authority has to sign off on it as part of the application. So if you're applying for like a DPI grant, there's lots of different things that it has to have either a principal or my signature on it. If you apply to like, even like a WAIF grant, which is our foundation, that has to have an administrator's signature on it. It's probably not 100% true, but I'm pretty sure it's almost universal that there's an additional level of signatory to it. I don't think we've ever run into anything right now, Steve, where we've seen somebody putting forth a grant that hasn't, that's caused issues. There's things that we've probably had folks wanting to apply for that we've said no to. I think that's kind of what you're alluding to. Because they're usually involving the classroom or school or the larger ones. Because Michelle McGlynn put forth for the Fab Lab grants. So I had to sign off on them too. Those were ones that had a matching piece. So there was a dollar amount that we had to match for them. But that was also administratively driven to ask her to put those forward. But any of those type of things all require multiple signatures before they can be even put forth. And anything that's usually with the state also often has assurances that you have to sign off on. I don't see the district. It's a great question, Ted. I just don't see it as a concern at this point. That's 657. 654 with regards to gate receipts and admissions. Our recommendation is to keep the current policy that we have for gate receipts and admissions. PRG does not have one. 654.1, free admission to passes to events. Our recommendation is to keep the current policy. There was a question I know brought up about students, etc. When the budget committee looked at it, they felt that it was cost prohibitive to do that. I mean, I think the dollar amount was, remember what it was, Steve? $40-some thousand. So I think they felt that at this point it was not something that that was supported moving forward, but potentially looking at some point in the future.
And that was for just high school students or all?
No, that's just high school kids. There were also, Katie, some just concerns with regards to some unknowns here. I mean, as far as how do you navigate that at the gate? And then also, just with regards to supervision. So there were some kind of questions, not only on there was a financial layer to it that I think went to the budget committee. But there were also logistical pieces that I think that the high school admin felt needed to be kind of looked at. Before you commit to something like that. So.
On the 554.1 on the senior citizen passes.
Yep.
Are those advertised very well?
They're not advertised very well. I think they're usually handed out. So I think that's something that probably the athletic department can advertise more. And Annie had them reprinted. So she and I have a stack of them when we go out to like the senior center. I know I've handed them out at like when I've spoken and stuff.
And it would be really nice to even have those available at the gates. As, you know, because there are some grandparents that come to every event and they don't even know. And I think it would be a nice gesture on the school part to make those much more.
Especially since you're cashless now too,
Yeah.
they've run into. I think,
And they have such a difficult time. I mean, I've had those calls. How do you do, what does it mean cashless?
Yeah.
So I think if we could
We
make
can
those
do that.
more available.
I had the question too, when it seems like there are a lot of different pass cards. How do the ones admitting you in, do you know, is this a legit card or something? But and so I brought that up and they do have like, I think you said they have
Rebecca
examples of
from
all
her
those.
experience has said that there's often a list of
Yeah.
the type of cards.
Jen actually takes a picture of the passes, so you have
Yeah.
a sheet, so you can, you know what the passes look like.
So we have different types of passes. I mean, you guys get them as school board members. I have a lifetime pass to all Badger Conference events. And then there's other ones that get passed out. There's the gold card, which is a senior citizen pass.
And do they have to get a new one each year? Once they get one.
That one's just once, yeah.
But that's a good idea to have them
At the desk.
and it's anybody that's 62 or older.
Right, you don't have to be a grandparent because we have a lot of people in that category that love to come to sporting. events.
And then, I mean, this isn't policy related, but I think if we're not gonna do the student thing, I think it's good to really advertise the family pass option.
Yes.
That's, yeah, it's a really good option that I don't know if other people.
Okay, that's good advice. That's that one. $655, income from school. Shop sales and services, our recommendation is to keep the current policy. The PRG does not have a recommendation. Product liability. This is with regards to, again, we're recommending that we keep our current policy, the 655 rule. Financial management and internal control, 660, that one is still being reviewed. Is that correct? Is that where I'm at? And then designation of depositories, 661. We're gonna replace this with the PRG version. They've included the 5-year invite for banks to serve as a depository. So if you agree with the changes that are being modified to the PRG version of the depositories policy. Again, designated director of business services, so delegating more to Alex. The next one, 661.1, authorized signatures. We're actually looking to delete this policy because it's already covered under a subsequent policy 673, disbursement of funds. So that's one we'll look at in a few minutes. But we don't feel we need that. This current policy segregated out any longer. We'll include it into 673. $661.2, check writing services. Our recommendation is to keep the policy as written.
There is the business manager in there. I don't know if I want to switch that out, but there was that.
Yep, in this bottom paragraph, I'll circle it. Thank you. 662.3 is fund balance. We're gonna recode this one and replace it with the PRG version.
Do we currently use 15%?
Yeah, it's in a policy, but it's more stated as
What did you ask, John?
Should we currently use 15%? But that was the percentage that.
We usually ebb and flow either north of that, or then depending on decisions that we've made as a organization. Have been times we've gone below it, but it's been for strategic reasons. Similarly, when you built up like in Fund 41, that
Yes.
pushed it higher, but then it wasn't also included in other considerations of fund balance. So it's kind of there's some nuances there, but that's like, I think I agree with Steve. It's kind of an objective to shoot for. Districts have that number all over the place. Some have much higher fund balances, some like to carry ones that are lower. Fund balance is also one that impacts when and if you have how much of your short-term borrowing, etc., when you have to do that. 661.3, returned checks and other denied payments. We're going to, we have a couple things going on here. We are going to renumber this and adopt the PRG. And we're going to convert our current policy 661.4.
We're not converting,
No,
no rule.
oh, you got rid of the rule.
Yeah.
Got it. Thank you. So we got rid of the rule and we are adopting the PRG version. The recommendation from Barry was we could have kept our current policy, but upon review, we decided to move to the PRG. Thanks, Rebecca. 661.5. You'll remember this one, Joan. This was after the referendum in 2014. Conversation we had was whether we needed this any longer. Our recommendation was to remove it.
So is there, I know there was such a big discussion about making sure 300,000 went to technology and 300,000 went to our maintenance. Are those levels of budget always there? And I agree. We don't need it
I
anymore.
think those have kind of become standard parts of the budget.
Yeah.
I think the other piece that you have is the reason this was put in, so doesn't mean that you couldn't change that in the future. I think that the board at the time wanted to make sure that it was harder to change that practice.
Yeah.
But I think that's now been ingrained for the last 10 years as far as what's gone into there. And I don't think meeting the policies there. And I think particularly as you start to look at budget flexibility, I think you're going to want that. But right now it's built in as part of the tech and the other industry.
I mean, the whole language around the operational referendum stuff wouldn't necessarily be bad to have a discussion about that in terms of policy. It seems to be that's going to be a continuing thing. So this was really specific to 2014. Is it? So yeah, I agree. Get rid of it. Is it worth a discussion to say? Does it make sense to have a policy going forward with reference to referendums or something to think about? I think.
Yeah, the conversation we had with Ted was this was a referendum specifically of 2014, but we've had subsequent referendums since then, and we don't have policy that directs it. And there were specific things that those were targeted towards as well, but it's probably worthy of it. So maybe it's not a policy, maybe it's a piece that you just kind of have as an agreement as far as you review as part of the budget process of where referendum funds go. But there is a point as you get further out, those funds do become this part of your operations. 665. Fraud prevention and reporting. We are renumbering this and also aligning it with the PRG. So we are adopting the PRG version of this. $664, which is handling of money in district and building activities. We agree with adopting the PRG version of this policy. Then our current 665 is with regards to petty cash, and our recommendation is to delete this. Again, some of the pieces with cash are incorporated into 673. $671.1 is with regards to pay schedules. And upon review, we recommend keeping this one. Just lays out the expectation of pay schedules. $671.2 is with regards to expense reimbursement. Our recommendation is to keep this policy. There was question that we've had from some staff. I think you heard about it at maybe some of your listening sessions with wanting greater flexibility for travel and how funds could be utilized. And I guess upon our review, we felt that we're comfortable with keeping it as is. And I think what we have is we do utilize, what's it called? Yeah, that's the guidelines as far as we use, I think Milwaukee as kind of our guide for what the costs are. Realizing that Milwaukee is more expensive than kind of where we live. And realizing people are traveling at different places around the country, we understand that. But also think the desire was to have more of like a daily stipend. And our feeling was that being able to have this more delineated out by what you can spend for your different meals is a better practice than just having a stipend that somebody gets just for travel. So that was our take, was to not make a change and keep it as is. $671.3 salary deductions. We were looking to, we're deleting this based on some of the actions and work that's within NAP 10, and some of those aren't allowed.
So for their union dues now, they don't have any option, and it's all being. So they just do most of them pay a lump sum, and does it go through your office at
It
all?
can't go through us at all.
And
So, yeah. It's also part of why we don't know who's a member of the union or not, and none of it goes through us. This all goes separately, so this policy's not needed. $672 is with regards to purchasing. That one is still under review. And then we have 672.1, which is purchasing approvals. Now, the one piece that we changed here, and you'll see it in your policy, is that this policy generally was referring to non-federal funds. But when you utilize federal dollars, there may be some other purchasing guidelines that need to be followed. So instead of having two policies that really delineated those two out, we just we added a sentence to it that just said this policy refers to purchase approvals using non-federal funds. Federal funds must follow the federal purchasing approval guidelines. So, and all of our federal funds flow through our business office and our administration. So those are things like you can, Tiffany's got quite a few of them, like her flow through grant, it's all federal funds. Tim and Amy, Title I, Title II, all of those are federal dollars. So they have different guidelines. So this is how we've articulated it here.
I was amazed that that was first adopted in '82 and never changed.
There you go.
Good policy.
Rebecca, if you want to look at I think it says business manager.
Oh, thank you.
672.3 is cooperative purchasing. We're looking to replace that with the PRG version. $672.4 is with regards to sales and vendor relations. Looking to keep our current policy. There's also some pieces that are going to be part of 672. PRG addresses that. We may have addressed that in the internal procurement procedures. Please, you want to speak to that, Steve? Do you have a background on that?
Yeah, he's just referencing that with the federal purchasing guidelines, there are some requirements to disbar or suspend a vendor, which isn't included in this language. So he's just saying that's gotta be part of that review.
Okay.
That he hasn't, done yet.
All right, very good. 673 is disbursement of funds. And we are looking to replace with the PRG version.
Steve, do we currently have forgery bond insurance?
Yeah, we do.
One of the things that Barry has done is taken this PRG, and if there are pieces within our current policies that we want to keep, he's added those effects. So those changes have been made. 673.1 is our credit card program. This is one that we have reviewed in recent years. And our recommendation is to keep, there is a policy for the PRG, but our recommendation in his was to keep our current policy. $680 is fiscal accounting and reporting. There is not a PRG version to this one, and my recommendation is to keep the one that we have.
Back on the, yeah. Back on the previous policy, you got a couple
Yep.
of business managers in there.
Which one is that?
On 673.1,
Um,
page 2.
oh, yep, on top.
And further down. Requesting the issuance of credit cards submitted to the business manager,
All right,
so.
And it's in the 680.
it's in the top.
Yeah,
So now,
in the 680 fiscal accounting one.
Oh.
It's there.
In the third paragraph, the first sentence in the third paragraph, superintendent and or business manager.
Yep. Got it. All right. 683 is inventories. Only change we have to this one is our changing the business manager distinction. And it references some of the federal procurement guidelines which we're aware of. $84 is audits. My recommendation is to keep our current policy with regards to audits. And the disposition of district property. And this is one where we had already adopted the PRG version in 2022. So our recommendation is to keep the version that we have. That is the entirety of the 600 series.
Just
with those couple.
With those couple, yeah, those changes as we went through, and we'll make those.
There's a couple that.
There's a couple of the items that you gave comments to, which I have notes on, and then the business manager cleanup piece that will continue.
motion to approve the list of policies as discussed in.
Second.
All in favor?
All right.
Thank you.
Hey, the only other piece I want to bring up is that we did have, I think some of you received an email with regards to a policy related item regarding transportation. Steve, can you just review that, kind of what they're asking for, and then we can determine if that's something we want to look at as a policy committee. We have another policy committee, I think we're targeting on like June 28th.
So if we're tackling the 700s. It's.
That's where it's at.
It's alternative transportation, which is in the transportation. So the email that you received was related to alternative transportation. And the fact that there is a at-home state licensed daycare in the newly ineligible area for the new heritage. So there have been some concerns expressed by parents who have their children going to that daycare and then, of course, the daycare itself. The history of that is it goes back to when Adventures in Learning was in their old building and Arboretum opened up. They were within a mile of Arboretum, and there was a lot of requests to the school board to allow Adventures in Learning to continue as a drop off. Because they obviously were when we only had Heritage and Prairie. So then the board decided this could open up the door to everyone wanting alternative transportation within a mile of the school. And so the board came up with 17 is the number that at that point the board was comfortable with, that it's got to be a licensed daycare, but a bigger one that has at least 17 students. Because the intent was to minimize it, because alternative transportation is just a huge issue for the principals to try to deal with. So the board came up with that as kind of a compromise, which did allow Adventures in Learning to be a drop-off location. Brilliant Beginnings is now where Adventures in Learning used to be, and so that's now eligible because that's a bigger location. So the request is to reconsider that policy and lower the 17 to something else. So as a board, you'll just need to take a look at that and decide if you want to keep it the way it is. Do you want to lower it? If you lower it, the only thing to keep in mind is we'd have to open it up beyond just the requester, because there's others that are within Prairie and Arboretum that also would then now qualify. And we would have to figure out who that is, which is fine. If the board wants to go in that direction, we just need a different number than 17 to do that. I don't know how many others there would be, but we'd have to try to do a search and figure that out. But basically, I know there's a group of parents who do use that daycare who would prefer it to be a location that we would drop off at. And currently, we're not able to because the policy has a number of 17.
Steve, for these different sites, even early in the beginnings, if a child there is not within the Arboretum district, do we have to then do the transfer busing?
Yeah.
So that would include all the transfer busing that we say, that opens up that whole complicated.
I would say the biggest concern, one of the big concerns that we hear from our educators is the end of the day loss of time and the transfer between schools. If you were to ask Amy, who's obviously not here, her preference would be no shuttles between the 3 schools because of the loss of time at the end of the day. We actually talked about that, but Randy's advice was first focus on hazardous transportation, your eligibility, because that's a bigger topic. And let's just tackle one of those at a time. But I will tell you, the administrative team at the elementary level actually would prefer to have that discussion about no longer shuttling. I mean, our policy is so flexible when you think about it. it would allow a family north of town that goes to Prairie to request to go to the new daycare in Bishop's Bay.
Yeah.
And we'll do it. So they have to shuttle, leave school early, go over to Arboretum. And then at Arboretum, they're responsible for collecting all the kids from Prairie and Heritage who want to go to Bishop's Bay. And then they add their kids. And so it's just it's a big operation.
I think when you look at the shuttles, that's one that the amount of time to give notice to parents is gonna have to be significant. There's already a shortage of daycare. And being able to navigate any shifts of that is gonna need significant time. That was kind of why I recommended chunk it out and do one piece at a time. But if this is the alternative transportation is in the 700s. We are actually gonna we have some of the 700s already. That's what's gonna be going at the end of the month. So maybe we just tackle that as it rolls through under the 700 series. Cause that'll be done here in it'll be done over the summer, so.
Would it be difficult to put together what the additional costs would be? Maybe estimate. I would imagine there's additional costs associated with it. And also, not that I think we need to do a big analysis on it, because I know you did present to us that what other districts are doing and we're doing our alternative transportation practices over and above what our other districts are doing. So to make it even more flexible, I think would be more costly and would, move us in the opposite direction of what we're looking to do eventually, so.
And would it be possible to have, if we would go down the lane of considering these smaller daycares, to make the statement that it won't include the transfer shuttle, that daycare only gets dropped off at the neighbor school that it takes them. If it's under whatever number, that's the only route you get. Because then if you eliminate that big arm, it's a service, but it isn't such a complicated one.
Right. I mean, you're absolutely right about that. That would make it quite simple.
And it
because-
might satisfy
Right,
a lot of the people who
Right.
are struggling.
right. And that's a good idea.
It's more of an FYI, that's where that's coming in the next series, so.
So,
We'll just include it into the next series as those get completed.
in response to the parent who originally, you didn't respond to her at all.
No, I just shared the background of the board, but if it's gonna be coming. I don't know if it's on the list.
No, I haven't looked at the 700s
I
yet.
can let her.
Can you let her know that wouldn't mind doing that would be great.
Just tell her that we're doing a policy review and that'll be in the next series, so it'll be taking place in the next month or so.
Thank you.
Good idea. I think we have the next meeting set
And I'm gonna sub for you, Katie. Thank you.
on the 28th, so I would say the motion to here.
Motion to adjourn. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Let that